That's direct response. And then you have like SEO copywriting, which is when, and I worked with a client who had their whole website written by an SEO copywriter. And so you're using, the words so Google picks up on it. But then what happens is if Google recognizes the website, okay, great. So they get people to the site, then what happens? So the SEO, the copy was written in such a way, because I ended up redoing his whole site for him. And we include, as a conversion copywriter, I include some of the SEO keywords, but it's not based completely on that.
Wanna cause no problems. I just wanna live my life, but I keep on hearing about nonsense. Me and my dons ain't mobsters, but when you see imposters, we know how to read them faces, same way you know how to read them comments. If you wanna talk, let's talk, but around here, make sure you're walking your talk is.
Well, the number one thing is the headline. And on a landing page or a home page, it would be called the hero section. So that's the big piece of real estate on the top of the page. That has to capture attention. That's where I spend most of my time, whether it's an email subject line, headline, a hero section. Because if people don't stop and read it, they're not going to read anything more. 80% of people like skim. I do. Just because they don't know if this product is for them. I'm not going to read every word. I mean, some people do, but they're
right.
Psychopaths. No, I don't know if they're psychopaths, but
they have more time than you and I do have, on our hands, apparently.
But what happens is the copy should have eye-catching, what they have they call them crossheads, which are, some people call them subheadings, but that's actually below the crosshead. So you want to have and pop out some of the quotes that are eye-catching, statistics that are shocking, so that when someone looks at the page, so say they read the headline, and then they're going to stop at the quotes that are pulled out, the images that they're going to review it. Then if that captures their attention, they'll go back and start reading a smaller print. And so the page has to be geared for all these different decision makers. There's people who skim, people who read, like I just said, there's different categories of them, which I don't know all of them offhand, but there's people who look like humanitarian people who just look for, they're attracted to pictures of people, family photos, maybe, and something that it's like their lifestyle.
Right.
There's others who really want the statistics, the SaaS companies. I mean, a lot of people who are looking for a SaaS product are really interested in, show me the numbers kind of thing. You just have to know your audience, but you structure the page in such a way that it draws the eye through, I mean, if you have a solid block of text, no one's going to read that. But it seems to be the trend, especially at websites lately, is very little text. I'm having my website redone as we speak. It'll be launched on Monday, and I'm having a hard time just like, okay, we have to sum this up. We have space for one sentence right here, and that it's harder to do that than it is to just drone on and on. But yeah, you want to capture people visually with the page.
Yeah, I think the ironic thing for me is that what seems to be good copywriting is the exact opposite of everything I learned in school. Because like in school, you're like, write big paragraphs and like all this other stuff. And then like you learn copywriting, it's like, say it shorter, no shorter, no shorter. Okay, now turn it into bullet points. And it's like, okay. Like, because like you said, you're arranging it for skimming. You're arranging it for people who are like, like when you sit down and read a book, like you've done that on purpose. Like you want to read it, even though I just read the other day that like a lot of people don't get past the first chapter, but it's still more intentional. Like this is kind of something where like someone maybe not as intentional, and so that, like you said, they're trying to figure out if it's for them, and so they got to figure out real quick. And so a nice couple paragraphs isn't going to do it for them. It's just not fast enough. Right. But that's not what you're taught in school, so it's definitely a mindset shift for sure. I say
that one of my viral posts on LinkedIn was when I said how Grammarly can ruin your copy. And I didn't realize people really rely on Grammarly. And I had people that were pretty angry with me. But I said that it doesn't take into account slang. It doesn't take into account the way people really talk. and they add words. Like, I'm constantly fighting Grammarly because it pops up on, and I like that it catches the typos. I mean, that's a good thing.
Oh yeah.
But there are times when I just want to just turn it off, and then I'll inevitably get a typo and go, I guess I should turn it back on. But it's not always right, is my point.
Right. I've never even used it, so I couldn't tell you, but I know some people live and die by it. So I find that Google Docs has a spell checker, so I'm not too worried about it. But
yeah.
Interesting. That's so funny. People get offended by that stuff.
People get offended by everything, don't they?
That's true. That's
Words.
true. How dare you tell me something I'm doing is not working? So the last thing I wanted to hit before we run out of time here is something that I think I've only really heard you talk about, or at least use the phrase that you've used for it, which is market sophistication. It's something, like I said, people just don't talk about it very much, and I think it's very important. So talk to us a little bit about what market sophistication is, and like what people are really missing out on by not taking that seriously.
There's high and low levels of market sophistication. So a low level of market sophistication is if you sell a product or service that people have not heard of, or it's new, or it's a new version of something that is very unfamiliar. And then a high level, I mean, think about, fitness equipment. Again, I always go back to that because I'm just so familiar with it. But if you're selling a treadmill, I mean, there's hundreds of treadmills out there. So that's a high level of market sophistication. Low level would be something like when Peloton came out. So there were all these stationary bikes, but Peloton separated itself out from the pack because it was very different. People weren't familiar with it. And the reason it's important is a couple things. One is if you're selling something that's in a high level of sophistication, like say you're a website developer, and I've worked with some people that do that, it's harder to differentiate yourself. So this is where what I do and the research I do really comes into play, because I will dig until I find why you're different and better than your competitors. And the other thing is when it comes to copy, if you have a new product, like you can also think about like battery powered cars versus gas powered. Most of us are more familiar with gas powered cars. So if it's you're selling an electric car, you need to explain more. There's a lot more for that person to learn. So if you're selling a product on your site and they're not familiar with it, you have to go into more detail with the copy. You can't just hit them up with what it is. Here, buy this. Well, I don't know anything about it. So there's a lot more explaining. So those two things really come into play with the copy.
Okay.
And then also, you can tell by the number of competitors how saturated the market is. So if you put something out there and you go and you have 1 million competitors, so that's a high level of market sophistication and high saturation. So it's just harder. And people who do that, a lot of times I find with clients or people who are considering hiring me, I ask them, well, how are you different? And they have no idea. I mean, you have to start with that, because if you don't know why you're different and why you're better, how are you going to sell your product? And it could just be that the niche is a little bit different. Like with me, even as a conversion copywriter, there's 1 million copywriters out there. So I wanted to specialize. And so I niched down to conversion copywriting. And I wanted to make sure I was good. I became certified. And when I was certified through Copy Hackers, they told me I was the first person in 2 years to become certified, because you have to go through this process where you have to submit all this copy for approval by their team. And so I had to do Facebook ads, landing pages, home pages, long form sales page, and it all had to be approved and critiqued before they said, okay, you're certified. So that's what I did to differentiate myself. But you have to do that in a field like this.
For sure. So it's not, so it's like a mix of things. Like part of it is that it's the differentiation part that's harder if the market sophistication is higher, but it's also just, I guess that's the seesaw. It's a high level of market sophistication. The difficulty is differentiating yourself. If it's a low level, it's properly educating someone to the point where they can start. It's almost like creating the need. in a lot of
Right.
ways. Like when the first, iPhone came out, and it's like, well, like it's really cool, but like, do I need to touch the screen? And then it's like, yes, I do, because
Right.
it's awesome.
Right.
But yeah, it was like the first thing, and it was like having an app store was like a really big deal, brand new concept. That's why on Steve Jobs' keynote, it was like, there's an app for that, there's an app for that, there's an app for that, because it was like reinforcing that idea over and over in the head of like, hey, this is a new concept, think of something, there's an app for it. And so I'm assuming that like for like the low sophistication type things, there's like, does your copy end up being longer, or does it just like take different shape, or is there just a higher volume of different kinds of content that help in getting people educated, or how does that typically work in that situation?
I mean, it's usually more copy, but think about like the unaware, because it's almost like you're trying to sell or address people who are unaware. So
Mm,
that, I talked about that in the levels of awareness. And so that's someone who they don't even know that they need what you have. So now you have to start really, I mean, they probably, like you said, with the iPhone, so people are interested, but I don't know, is this going to take off like when the internet first came into fruition, which I'm old enough to remember. I remember like what is, what's a social network? I remember
mm,
interviewing somebody for that. I mean, and so,
dang.
and back then it's like, oh, who needs a website? What company needs a website? So that you have to establish it. And the first couple of companies to come out with that, like Peloton now has a ton of competitors. It's like, okay, so they start like Bowflex now has a subscription, and Peloton sales are down because now everyone's copying them. But to pave the way is really hard. So it's a
Mm,
matter of educating, and it depends. I think you probably have to come at it with a number of different angles, like really get active on social media. You're going to have to probably, do some paid ads, you have to do more. Like iPhone or Apple just has to say, hey, we have a new iPhone coming out tomorrow, and they'd have lines out the door that people don't even ask questions. I don't care. It's like, I have an iPhone 10, and every time I see the iPhone 13 commercial, I'm like three incarnations behind. I have to get on the stick. I don't even know what's the difference. I don't even care,
I have an
so
8, so I'm so behind.
right.
I'm like the version they're gonna like start just like not even supporting anymore soon.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think when you were describing some of that, it just makes me think of the fact that, is it just that like people like, because when you talked about like the pain, the was it pain something solution? I don't remember it.
Product
Um,
aware.
okay, yeah. So, is it just that the people don't even know that they have that pain, and then so that's what you're trying to like actually help them see for the first time?
I mean, if they don't feel like they have a problem, to help somebody see it is really a losing battle. You really, when I think about, people who, I'd go walking around and my husband would say, oh, that person looks like they're out of shape, they could use your help. I said, I'm the last person that they want to hear from. They don't care. You're like, you know, and even at the gym. So I worked and I was getting paid at the gym, or even with my personal training clients when I was doing personal training. These people are paying me $100 an hour, and I'm telling them how to do something, and they're arguing with me. And
Mm,
it's like, people don't like being told what to do. Even when they're paying you to do it, they don't like being told. So they have to have some level of willingness to listen to you, or you're
right.
not going to get anywhere. And it's just going to be a losing battle. So they have to be willing to hear you out, consider, that's kind of an inside job. There's really nothing you can do to, force somebody,
For sure.
because, yeah, it wouldn't be good.
That's why every business got to find the right kind of clients. Because
I
yeah,
know.
it's I always say, like for me, like business just always goes back to relationships, and it's like, have you ever tried to convince someone to date you? It usually doesn't go well, and so
No.
like someone's gonna get frustrated, mad, and even if it does work, it won't last. And so I feel like for business, it's the same kind of way, where it's like if you try to like force someone to love what you're doing, or force someone to try to see a pain point or whatever else, like it's just ultimately going to be frustrating, ineffective, and not work. So why
And
even try?
Yeah, and I've tried that. At the beginning, when I first started doing copywriting, I tried doing some cold pitching, and I would do research on the company. It wouldn't be just, hey, a blanket, email, but it was never, I mean, I ended up getting 2 clients that way, but it was only because I was the right place, the right time. If they don't feel like, I would go on a website and I'd say, okay, I can make this better. And I would send them a short video. Like, this is, what I would do. They didn't ask for that though. So
Yeah.
I rarely got a response. It could be the worst website in the world. And I've seen some pretty bad ones. If people don't see a problem, like say they're selling things like crazy, they don't see like, well, what are you going to do for me kind of thing. So
you could sell
I just
more.
did a post on LinkedIn. What?
Said you could sell more. Like,
I know, but I did that the other day on LinkedIn. I talked about how people, you can't force somebody or convince somebody to see your value. They need to see it and feel it themselves.
Sure.
There's no shortcut to that. You can arm wrestle them. Maybe that would work. I don't know. I haven't tried.
I would win. So maybe that's my new technique. I've taken down some big dudes, so that would be awesome. I'm not afraid of a man who spends all day in a suit. So, cool. So let me finish up with just some more fun rapid fire questions, if you don't mind, just like fun stuff about you. So, tell us one book that you're reading right now, whether it's business or otherwise, that you are thoroughly enjoying.
Oh, it's funny that you say that. Where the Crawdads Sing.
I've heard of that.
I would see it on Amazon. It has like 25,000 5-star reviews. And I saw a commercial the other day. They are coming out with a movie.
Okay.
And I ended up starting to listen to the audio, and I'm reading it, and I'm completely engrossed. And it's been a while since that's happened. So it's fiction.
that is sounding so familiar. What's that about?
Well, I just started it. So it's, but it's this family, this young girl who's very poor. Her mother left. Her father is awful. And so she's trying to make her way. And in the meantime, there's kind of 2 stories going on. They found, there's a homicide. This young boy was found in a lake. And that's the commercial that I saw. And I didn't even start reading the book before I saw that commercial. I said, that looks like it's that book I bought that I never read. And so it's well written and it's really good.
Nice. That's awesome. Very cool. Assuming you haven't seen it yet, what is your most anticipated movie of 2022 that you're wanting to watch?
Probably the new Top Gun, Maverick.
I've heard it's so good.
I've heard it's crazy good. And I am not really a go to the movie theater kind of person, but 99% on Rotten Tomatoes, and people saying that there were kids standing up in their chairs cheering at the end. I'm like, I've got to see this. So yeah.
I mean that's a challenge. That's a classic. I have that in VHS in my house. That's well, cool.
Yeah, that movie.
I like it. And let's see here. You live here in Arizona, where I live. So what is your favorite restaurant, assuming you go out?
We haven't gone out here yet because it's only been 2 months we've been here. And so I don't know.
Dang, you don't have a hotspot yet. Okay. All right.
No, we're looking. In fact, we were just talking about that, my husband and I. He said, we haven't gone out to dinner yet. Let's pick a place. So he's a big steak guy, and I don't eat meat. I eat fish. So he said, okay, we'll find a steakhouse that serves fish, which they do.
Sure. I mean, I would say that's
so
probably
I'm not going up to Phoenix. I'd ask for your advice, but I'm not traveling that far for dinner.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for opening up our minds to the world of conversion, copywriting, being able to talk through, because I just look at everything from a content perspective, just creating content that is able to meet people at each stage of the decision process, being able to create content that, whether visual or written, that is able to get people on the right track and understanding where they're coming from, right? Whether it's they're completely clueless about it or that they know a lot about it, and being able to take that into account and do the research to do that. So thank you. Those are all super helpful.
Thank you.
And so, yeah, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Wanna cause no problems. I just wanna live my life, but I keep on hearing about nonsense. Me and my dons ain't mobsters, but you know when you see imposters, we know how to read them faces, same way you know how to read them comments. If you wanna talk, let's talk, but around here, make sure you're walking your talk is constant.